Welcome back to Triple B Movie Reviews. Jake here with the Ed with our
beer,
our beards,
and our B movies.
So today we have
It Kills.
Camp Blood Part 7.
Yeah. This is one of these where there's not a part 2 through 6. It just doesn't exist. But this is Camp Blood Part 7.
Give us a rundown on it.
Okay. This is apparently a group of college kids on a fall break. Take off in a car. They never say where it is they're going.
They don't, do they?
No, they never do. They end up taking a detour supposedly to save them time getting there and end up in the now defunct Camp Blood, where they run into the slasher. And I'm not a fan of slasher films. I want to make everybody, that's not my thing. But I kind of liked this one. It's just light enough that I just kind of liked it. And it just goes through them being here at this lake and at this old camp and, getting picked off one at a time.
Yep, the usual slasher tropes.
Right. And that's really, without giving away everything, that's the setup. That's what goes on.
Okay, so what was your positives?
Positives. Oh, gosh. There's a lot of stuff I liked, some of which was because it was improbable. And I brought up the car when I was talking with you. They're in this little compact Chevrolet. I don't know, maybe a Cruise. I'm not sure what it was.
I don't know. It's
not a Chevy fan.
Early 2000s.
Yeah,
hatchback.
Fairly newer little car. But you could tell 3 people fit in the back seat. Now, they already had 3. They had this disabled young man and 2 girls. And they're driving along.
Which would have been Terry, Lizzie, and Jenny.
Okay. They're going along and they see this guy walking down the road and they decide to pick him up and give him a ride. He hops into the back seat too, where there's obviously, we would be stacked at some point, somewhere. And then from then on, depending on who was talking, from the angle, you could only really see 3 people. That other person would have been out of the view.
I envision they have Greta Volka playing Jenny and Lizzie sitting in the car. And like one guy would get on one side, and the bishop would get in.
Yeah,
and
that's obviously what they were doing.
And the bishop would get out, and
right.
Terry would get back in.
And then they stop at the little garage, and they all jump out of the back seat. Yeah. I thought that was great.
That was a good part.
So, for good parts, that was, it wasn't.
Did you have a favorite scene?
Yes, the scene I missed originally when I watched the movie. This is the only Polonia film I have seen thus far that had boobies. I watched this movie on 123 Movies, okay? They had cut the preamble completely out, where it starts right off with the credits, so you don't realize anything's gone. But there was a 6 or 7 minute scene previous to that with Ken Van Sant and boobies. My son showed that to me.
Tommy and Paula are on a boat, yeah, and there's a scene where she takes her top off and lays on the back of the boat, and it's obvious. This scene is only there to put in the slasher trope of boobs.
There is nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely any movie. I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care if you're doing the fall of the Roman Empire. You can stop for a couple minutes, look at
pretty
boobs.
funny.
Doesn't hurt. Go right back to the story.
That you missed that in the beginning.
So I don't think that was funny at all. I'm going to call
my
those
positives.
people.
My positives were. I enjoyed first off, it's a Polonia film, so you enjoy the fact that it's a micro budget. I like
and all the regulars.
Some of the ways that they would do things to try to cover up, like when they would stab somebody in the head, you would see the head, and then obviously the blade's in the ground behind
or
it.
something. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I enjoyed the fact that it had some of the you saw Van Sant, you saw Jeff Kirkendall. You saw Greta Volka, Stu.
And I enjoyed the fact that he
James
died early.
Crollis. I enjoyed watching him as a slasher, and you can tell with his body language and how he did things, it was obvious who was playing him. So that was good.
I didn't catch that, but
I enjoyed the fact that there were some points where, this is my good and bad, which we'll discuss here in a second, was that like there were some points where like people would hide from the slasher. Where it was very obvious that the only way this works is if it's written in the script to work this way. So.
Yeah. When the girls were in the shed, and they walked up to the door, walk right in, crawl under a table. The clown didn't open the door to peek in. He's looking for these two girls.
Yeah, like he was just magically couldn't get in the door.
Yeah.
He can open a car door, steal a car. He's smart enough to start the car and drive it somewhere,
but not smart enough to take the keys with him afterwards.
Yeah,
so they can't.
Or open the door when it's said. So what was your negative?
Negative. Well, you've taken it away. My negative was the traditional no boobies, because I didn't see the opening sequence until today. But no, it was what it was. I enjoyed it overall.
My negatives are, both the positive and the negative are very similar. It's a micro budget film, so the script's not what it could be if it was an A. Some of the, like when Greta Volka's getting chased by the camp killer, and like we discussed, there's several scenes where they're running right behind each other.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, she's hiding in this little area that's very obvious. If he was that close, he would have seen her, but he goes behind the
Well, it's the all of a sudden when it's time for me to hide, magically he's way behind me where he doesn't see me jump on.
So that was entertaining. I liked the tropes they used, the boobs. They had a girl that fell. I should have been in my positives, but it's kind of the negative same. But they didn't use them in the typical way. You had boobs, and you had a girl that was horny and wanted to have sex, but they weren't together.
They weren't the same girl.
Yeah. And then you had a girl fall, and she ends up getting caught by the slasher because she fell and hurt herself.
But she gets caught later on.
But yeah, she gets caught, she falls and has to go back to the shed, and then all of a sudden he figures out how to go in. So, I mean...
She tries to get him with the axe, he takes it away from her and kills her.
So, while those are negatives, they're soft negatives, because I enjoyed them. They just were things I noticed.
It was just entertaining in the little low-budget B sort of way that films sometimes are.
So, what was your overall grade?
I'm close to a 2. I'm going to say 1.875. I think this was a 2. Wait a minute. No, I'm taking this all back. I'm going to give this 2 1/8. We're throwing in the bonus for the boobs that I didn't see till today. 2 1/8.
I'm going to go with a 2, and I would have gone higher because of the fact that it is so entertaining to see the tropes and to see the way they deal with things, except for the main guy. And every time they would show a close-up of him talking, like at one point they showed it and he kept looking down. The other two girls are showing close-ups on are looking at where the character would be in the film,
right?
And he's like down. So he wasn't as impressed with me.
I had to admit, when he showed back up, it's like, and he wasn't so hard or was too hard to kill or some bullshit like that. I was really not all that thrilled that he had survived. He was kind of a butt through the whole movie. And that was obviously his part.
Yeah. So, if you're giving it 2 1/8, I've given it 2. That gives us 2 1/16 average across the board. Which brings us to your favorite time of the day, the Triple B question of the week.
Oh, damn it.
Since we're watching a slasher film, and we've discussed that we don't, neither one of us are big fans of zombies. You're not a big fan of slasher. What horror or sci-fi genre do you think is better as a B movie or micro budget film such as this than when they try to make it into a big budget?
I'm confused.
Well, like for example, we enjoyed this movie, and I think this was better
Because
than if
it
they
was low budget,
like
yeah.
right because when they've tried to redo Friday the 13th.
Because this was like a familiar group of friends getting
Mm-hmm.
together and doing this, and so you kind of enjoyed it.
What other trope or what other genres do you think? What would you think would be the best to do in a micro versus trying to do in a large budget?
Well, obviously, plot is everything, and to me, it doesn't have to be all that fantastic budget wise, but was it a neat idea? Did it make you think a little bit? And you can do that with everything. I'm not anti-zombie. I just think they're overdone right now.
But what type of movie do you think is more enjoyable as a micro budget?
Well, I think horror's perfect as micro budget. Just perfect. I don't think you could beat horror. Hard to do sci-fi with a micro budget.
Bruce Campbell would argue that point.
Well, and you can't argue with Bruce.
Do you have anything for him before we go?
Not this time.
All right. Well, as always, if you can't be a redneck, leave a six-pack out for one.